All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Kayla Seibel, Senior Planner with the City-County Planning Department. Thank you for joining us to talk about the Page Miami Design District. If you have seen our flyer or any of our information in the past few weeks, we called this project the RTP South rezoning. We've changed it to Page Miami to better distinguish this work from the Research Triangle Foundation's initiative RTP 3.0 and the visioning they're doing for Research Triangle Park proper. So we didn't want to be confused with their work. And we also came up with a name that kind of better pinpoints the area we're talking about. So you're in the right place if you're here for RTP South. We're just now calling it Page Miami. And this is the virtual meeting of our two-part first initial meetings for the project. We had an in-person opportunity a couple weeks ago. It was a drop-in style meeting with the same information. So this is just a different format. I'll give a brief presentation, hopefully lasting only about 10 minutes, and then we can open up for Q&A until 7. Like I said earlier, the chat is open. So if you have questions, you can add those in and we'll get to those after I'm done. And I'll also be adding some links to the project information in the chat as well. This is my contact information, Kayla Seibel, I'm the project manager, and then I'm here with Scott Whiteman, my supervisor, in charge of my community planning team, and we are leading this rezoning application. For those of you who are familiar with other types of rezoning applications, this is slightly different because it is staff initiated. So it means that planning staff are submitting the application to change the zoning for an area rather than a private developer who is looking maybe at a smaller site or collection of parcels. So this is a much larger area and it is led by staff. We're still following the same process. I think many of you have gotten the mailings we sent out. We'll send out some more, but still following the same public process as any other rezoning. This is just a short timeline overview of the timeline for the project. We're in the first stage. We've done some initial findings and research, looked at the study area, and started the first initial public meetings. After this, we will look at the public input that y'all have given us in this first two meetings and in the survey, and use that to refine our recommendations. We'll come back in August to talk about what our final recommendation is, and then hopefully have a revised submittal for Planning Commission in October. Depending on how long Planning Commission takes with the proposal, we may end up at City Council in early 2025. And we have all this information on our webpage too that I'll add to the chat later. So simply put, this project is to change the Page Miami area's zoning to compact suburban design district. This is a zoning district that's intended to encourage transit-oriented development, create more walkable neighborhoods, and it's done through a variety of sub-districts or a few sub-districts that we'll talk about later, and is similar to the downtown design district. So the zoning we're proposing is not going to be as dense as downtown, definitely not as intense in terms of building height and density, but it is intended to be more walkable, mixed use, variety of housing types as this area changes over time. Here's a map of the area. I'll go ahead and point out a few key roads. So we have I-40 coming along here. See my cursor. Then here is South Miami Boulevard bisecting the district. We have 54 coming down here and Page Road coming in from the west, from the east to west. This is and turning into Hobson Road. This area on the left-hand side of the map is Davis Park. Over the last 10 years, this has developed into townhomes and apartments, definitely introducing more residents to the area than had been here before. The south of Page Road are your typical suburban office parks, tall buildings, large parking lots, and sort of in the middle here is a commercial area. We have drive-throughs, retail, some older shopping centers. And then to the north here, this is more office parks and hotel uses. So that's kind of the lay of the land for this district. Over here, this space is part of Research Triangle Park. So it's just south of that, of the park proper. Just showing you briefly what the current zoning looks like. It's a variety of different zoning districts here. We have industrial park, industrial light, commercial uses, commercial zoning, CC and CG, and then this office and institutional, which as we saw previously before, is part of Davis Park, so which is more residential. So all of these are different zoning districts, and so our proposal would be to change the all of this zoning to one zoning district, compact suburban design. And I see your question in the chat, Mimi. This is not in RTP. This is in the city limits, right outside of RTP. On this map, it's maybe clearer to see that this greenish color are the park limits. And then we're right outside of that in this red border. Yeah, no problem. So getting into a little bit more information about what the new zoning district, the new zoning district we're proposing has in it, and why we're considering changing the zoning out here. So if many of you were part of this before, we've been working on a new comprehensive plan that was adopted last fall. And in that plan, we worked with residents to come up with a big overarching vision for Durham City and County, and that did involve looking at specific places and what kinds of future development residents wanted to see there. So in this map up here on the top right is our case area, and you see it's in this light purple. It's designated as a transit opportunity area, TOA, in the comprehensive plan, which is intended to be more walkable, mixed use area that connects residents to transit investments. So very much compatible with the zoning district that we're recommending. So part of developing that whole comprehensive plan, a big major way to implement it is by going through these rezonings, making sure that the zoning is consistent with our long-range vision in the plan. So we saw all those different zoning districts in the previous slide, and none of those really allow for or require special approval for dense development that supports walkable neighborhoods and a mix of uses and housing types. You can see that some of that has begun developing in the area in the last 10 years, but none of those zoning districts alone support the kind of vision that we have in our comprehensive plan. Just in terms of land uses, the compact suburban design district is pretty flexible in terms of what types of buildings and uses would be allowed. A lot of compatible uses, so residential with public and civic uses, commercial, office, light industrial, a lot of what you see already there, but more integrated together and knit together in more of a walkable urban form. Land uses that are not allowed according to our code are vehicle storage, sales, services, heavy industrial, and drive-throughs. This is a big one, except for banks and pharmacies can have drive-throughs in one of the sub-districts that we'll talk about. So definitely integrated mix of uses we want to encourage in this area, and then limiting those auto-oriented land uses like vehicle, auto dealerships, things like that. So getting into the weeds just a little bit into the compact suburban design district, and then we'll zoom back out. And all of this is on our webpage. And if you'll have specific questions about any of the elements in the ordinance, we can either get back with you or look it up here tonight. So a key part of the compact suburban design district are 3 sub-districts that have different standards. core, support 1, and support 2. And you can think of it as core being the highest and densest part of the area, tallest buildings, support 1 having moderate intensity. So, those banks and pharmacies can have drive-throughs in the support 1. And then support 2 is intended to be a subdistrict that buffers between the more dense, tall um, buildings and maybe some of the existing development or more residential development. So we can buffer that with more of a scaling down of intensity and development. We have not drawn these subdistricts yet. We wanted to hear from you all in these first meetings and through this survey about where you see the most appropriate places for more intense development or least intense development. And we'll work from that input to draw those sub-districts and return in August for your feedback. Just giving building height as a quick example, the height will vary depending on the sub-district. So looking at this chart here, we have core, support 1, and support 2. And you can see it definitely is very different in terms of height minimums or maximums, sorry, maximums with for residential, for non-residential, and then the standards are change a bit if a developer provides affordable housing. Height is a number that's hard to visualize sometimes, so I try to provide these two examples here. IQVIA, which is probably one of the tallest buildings, if not the tallest building in the area, is about 141 feet. So you could see more buildings in the core being that high, and or almost double if it's non-residential or affordable with affordable housing. And just as a side, we don't anticipate the core of this area being a very large area. We can talk more about that. The support 1 drops off drastically in terms of maximum building height for residential, 45 feet. And if you're familiar with the Hawthorne Davis Park apartments, those are about 55 feet. So hopefully that gives a decent visual of the types of heights that we allowed. You'll see these heights all across the area. So nothing should be very drastically different except for perhaps being up to 300 feet in height maximum within the core. That could be your biggest difference. And then support 2, you can see it also drops off dramatically in terms of allowed height. So we have this on our website and also in the survey, these examples here, if folks are interested in giving us specific ranges of heights that are preferable to y'all. One other thing to mention besides the zoning are future transportation plans. This is also a key component to aligning our land use plans and our land use patterns with future transit investments. This area has been talked about a lot in terms of that rail line that goes through the district, in terms of potential commuter rail that Wake County is looking at to the south, or a potential Amtrak station that could be added here along the railroad by the state. That potential rail projects, to my knowledge, have not been funded, at least on the Durham side. So they are just still lines on a map that have yet to become official projects. For bus investments, the Triangle is planning to move their regional transit center from off of Emperor Boulevard to closer to the hub near RTP, where you might see a lot of that development coming off the ground right now from I-40. There's a link there, and we also have that on our webpage to get more information. I'm not sure the status of funding for that relocation. I think last I heard they hadn't succeeded in getting a grant recently, but I think they're still pursuing grant opportunities for that relocation. The Wake County is doing a lot of planning for bus rapid transit. Some of you may know, in the western part of the county. And so their plans show connections to the Wake County portion of RTP. And it would make sense that if that is built, that Durham would be interested probably in connecting more of RTP to those bus rapid transit lines. The bicycle and pedestrian projects in the future, maybe some of you have heard of the Triangle Bikeway. That's a major bicycle and pedestrian path that goes into this area. And then a roadway study by the Regional Transportation Alliance to look at I-40 for better transit connections and more efficiency of buses using I-40. There's probably more to it, but that's the information I have right now. So it's a lot of potential projects going on, and we thought it made sense to have our zoning also match and support those potential projects. Almost done with my little spiel. So if you have your phone on you and you're not zooming in from the phone, you could scan this QR code to get to the survey. It's also at the top of our webpage, and I will put the link in the chat as soon as I'm done screen sharing. You could also go to it via this link. It's open until May 31st. I'd love to hear from folks joining today what you think about the different sub-districts or any concerns or thoughts you have about the district. And then, of course, we have our project website at the bottom. I will also, because I have all of your emails from registration, I'll send out a copy of these slides as well. Again, here's my contact information and Scott's information here. I think with that, we can go ahead and answer some questions, and I can always bring up any of these slides again. Thanks. All right. So I saw some in the Q&A here. Let's see, the first one, are there parking garages planned so there can be more dense walkable environments? I believe parking garages are allowed in the Compact Suburban Design District. Scott, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, at the moment, there's no public parking garages planned. Although typically if people develop denser developments, they they want to provide parking for their residents or customers, and typically if things are denser, then parking garages are built with the development. But we don't have any public parking garages planned in this area like we do downtown.
Great. And the next question, is it possible to put the tallest office/commercial buildings along the highway to block some noise? I think so. Yeah, that could be an option for where we put the core section closer to I-40 rather than closer to Miami.
Yeah, there's a question in the survey, isn't there, Kayla, about where
Yes.
buildings? Yeah, so one of the things we're really looking for in the survey is for opinions about folks' opinions about where taller buildings might be okay and where they definitely wouldn't be okay. So yeah, if you have opinions for any reason or about any of those, let us know.
All right, next question. Can you explain what is meant by affordable housing? Does that include a Section 8? Great question. So the affordable housing density bonus, so that is a mechanism in our Unified Development Ordinance that is supposed to work as an incentive for developers providing affordable housing that they could then build with more height or more density, provided that they are building affordable housing. So scrolling down on our webpage, there's some more information here. So within any subdistrict, provided that at least 15% of the total number of dwelling units that are proposed by a project, as long as they qualify as affordable housing, then that would qualify that project for the density bonus. And then only projects with a minimum of 15 dwelling units or projects adding at least 15 dwelling units to an existing development would be able to qualify. That's an aside there. And then as far as definitions of affordable housing, it's for a 30-year term for rental units. The household income must be at or below 60% of the area median income. So that's about $40,000 for a one-person household. And for home ownership, the definition of affordable housing for a 30-year term would be 80% or below the area median income, so about 54,000 for a one-person household. So, so I'm not sure how Section 8 works with private developers building that. I think typically the city or the Durham Housing Authority would build public housing projects that none are planned right now. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, so Section 8 is a funding mechanism where the it comes through the housing authority for it's public money for people to rent private apartments. And typically it's up to the individual landlords whether or not they will accept Section 8. So the affordable housing bonus requires the housing to be rent at a level that's affordable to a certain amount of people, which could include Section 8 housing vouchers as an option, but not necessarily.
Great, thanks, Scott. I'm gonna jump to the chat because there are some questions in there as well, and then I'll go back to the Q&A. So somebody was asking, how are these changes going to impact the value of properties? Maybe concerns about a train station that might does not seem to be a good feature for the area, and it might affect and the people that might attract. We have heard that, I think, in our first meeting and through some emails that folks might be concerned with a future transit project along the rail line. Property values are hard to predict as far as impact on them. I will say in this region or this study area, the railroad is a huge, huge physical barrier that separates those more residential area from the office and commercial area. So just as I-40 is a huge barrier, I don't know what the impact necessarily would be crossing the railroad there. Not a great straight answer for that one, but certainly add that to the survey as your input. I'd love to hear more from residents about your thoughts.
And so I saw your question in the chat, Joel. If you could reach out to me and Kayla after the meeting, we can talk about the specifics for your property.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you, Joel. Okay. Scrolling down. Okay. Understand rezoning will not allow more personal storage unit development, which would be good. I believe that's right, Scott. No more self-storage, at least in the zoning district we're proposing. Okay, with moving the transportation hub, will there be adequate parking for people who want to use public transportation? So I think on that website there might be some schematics about what the potential transit hub would look like. I would make an educated guess that because this area is still suburban and we have folks from all over the triangle commuting to RTP, that there would need to be park and ride, not just to RTP, but from RTP to other places, that there would need to be park and ride locations. So I don't have a definitive on what the future plans are, but just given where this area is in proximity to the rest of the triangle, that would be needed. All right, next question. Aren't affordable units allowable in most developments in Durham? Developers have to weigh loss of sales rental price against additional unit quantity. It's not unique to this rezoning. Right. Scott, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's true. Anywhere that housing is allowed by zoning, it can be developed as affordable housing. There's certainly no prohibition about providing affordable housing, but as you all might imagine, most people who build housing are trying to maximize their profit. So building affordable housing is usually not what the market provides. And so this particular zoning district has one of the most, because what's the word I'm looking for? One of the most generous bonuses for providing affordable housing. So one of the ideas is that we want to try to make up for the potential loss that a developer might have from providing affordable units by allowing them to provide more, even more units than they would normally.
Thanks, Scott. Let's see, jumping back to the Q&A. Is the project to build affordable houses? So simply, no, we are not proposing to build anything specific for this project. It is changing the zoning, but we hope that through the zoning change, there will be developers who are interested in building affordable homes. But that's so needed in Durham, and we've heard that a lot from residents. And then what is the timetable for the project? Absolutely. So let me put a link to the website in here so y'all can see it too. And I shared earlier in my presentation. So we're in the beginning stages. This is our first set of neighborhood meetings, sharing information about the project and hearing input before we start refining our proposal. We will return in August with another set of public meetings and a sub-district map to get feedback from you all about where the tallest and densest development should be in the area. And then after we hear feedback on our refined proposal, then we'll make any final tweaks and submit that to Planning Commission to start the public hearing process, hopefully in October. Over the summer, we should get those dates nailed down better. Then City Council will make the final decision about whether or not they want to rezone the area. And we think that may happen early 2025. They'll at least hear it early 2025. There's another question. Do you have any specific amenities or features for this district that you envision becoming available with this new zoning? I think as far as the vision for how this area might change as specific features is that we hope that perhaps in the more office park or commercial areas, that those parking lots could see buildings added to them, or some of the older shopping centers to be redeveloped. This zoning district is intended to allow for more buildings closer together in a more walkable environment, with all the necessary public infrastructure, or necessary infrastructure, sidewalks, bicycle lanes, depending on what's required by our transportation plans, and then any kind of access to existing or future bus stops. I know there's not a lot of bus access along here. There's a couple of stops along Page Road, and then of course Emperor to get to the transit center right now. Additionally, there are some, we didn't mention environment or public space in the presentation, but there are requirements for open space and landscaping and trees to provide a comfortable walking environment for folks getting to and from places and for folks living in the area. Pocket parks are possible, smaller refuges from the urban landscape are allowed in here and encouraged. If there's anything specific, you can add that in the chat or the Q&A that I can try to speak to. Go ahead, Scott.
This zoning district does require wider sidewalks than most of other places, which is, at least my opinion, one of the benefits of it.
Great, thanks Pam for adding your comment in the chat. Folks, you can also raise your hand if you don't feel like typing. I can try to unmute you. I see another question. Did you mention connection to the Greenway and Trail Plan? Is that a requirement? I did mention that. So the Triangle Bikeway shows an alignment coming in along, I believe along Page. Let me check on that. I've seen the map before, and I am not sure if that has funding. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have funding for the Durham portion at the very least. I think that would be a publicly built project, but it's um, possible that depending on what our transportation department has on their official plans, that they could require development to build that. But let me check on that. Scott, unless Scott, you know offhand. Okay. Well, likely, I think jurisdictions are wanting to pursue public funding for that. Okay. I will. Okay, it looks like we have a couple more questions. What is the total acreage? It's 458 for the entire case area. That doesn't mean that 458 acres will necessarily be developed into one particular thing. It's just the area that we are proposing to change the zoning for. Um, what percentage of the proposed rezoning area is currently undeveloped? Oh, great question. I have an estimate for that. Let me pull that up. Um, so there's not a lot, right? There are very few vacant parcels, and even some of the parcels that are necessarily empty have either a stream on them or are planned for already. Let me see if I can quickly find the estimate that I pulled together as far as vacant or undeveloped. See, while I look like for that, maybe Scott, you can take a question if you want to.
Yeah, I saw in the chat there's a question, is there a similar area in Durham or elsewhere in the triangle that would somewhat mirror this rezoning? So there was the Patterson Place area of Durham, which is I-40 and 15501 right next to Chapel Hill, was the first place that was rezoned to the CSD district. That was back in 2018. So that can give you some idea of some of the things that do get built. It also gives a good idea of that the changes do happen fairly slowly. Would not anticipate a whole bunch of new things in the area changing overnight. You know, things happen slowly. So there's been a few things built in the Patterson Place area, but it's still there's still a lot has remained the same as what it was before it was rezoned.
Let me get back to you on that percentage, just because I'm having trouble finding it as far as undeveloped, but it is a small percentage. But I will either put it in the chat before we end here or email it out. Okay, here's another question. Why is Davis Park being contemplated being included in the rezoning when it's much newer, well-designed plan than the more dated Miami corridor? Would the rail not make more sense as the western boundary? That's a great question. Um, so yeah, there's that Davis Park area is mostly built. It is well designed, and pretty consistent with what compact suburban design would ask for, in terms of like the mix and the housing diversity of housing types. I think primarily that OI zoning, the office and institutional zoning, is a little strange, and I think this is an opportunity to clean that up. I don't know if that's the primary. Scott, is that the primary reason for including that?
Yeah, the Davis Park, the part of Davis Park that's east of Davis Drive is based on an old zoning district from that hasn't existed for 20 years. So it's a problem to administer, but I can certainly see the point that, and we heard this from some folks at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, that the Davis Park seems fairly well set. So there doesn't seem to be a need to change the zoning. So we'll certainly take that into consideration.
Exactly. Additionally, I don't know how possible this is, but since those are the kind of major collection of residents in the area, if residents were to want to use transit and get around the area, I could see I could see the city and or the county looking at connections to help residents get from there um, to the rest of Durham through transit, through bike and ped or other kinds of transit connections. Okay, other questions? Let me scroll up. Okay, Scott answered that about Patterson Place. Okay, see that, Wendy. Thank you for adding that about the Triangle Bikeway plan. Okay, here's a question. Can you consider a city senior center? The existing one is great if you live in that area. As the city expands, so should city services to these areas. Definitely when we were looking at this area, there's not a lot of, there's no schools, there's no libraries, not a lot of public amenities in this area. I think um, we'd hope that those things will come. It's definitely allowed by the Compact Suburban Design District. Um, do you have thoughts on that, Scott? I don't know of a specific project for a senior center, but um, that's definitely good input. That's something that's needed in your community. Okay. Well, thank you for that information, Wendy. The RTP is already building their portion of the Triangle Bikeway, and Wake County is building the bikeway up to the Triangle Mobility Hub. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Okay, here's another question, and then I'll look for that question about undeveloped. Is it possible changes here would conflict with active development cases? If so, what happens if the zoning changes before work is started on these projects? So we did take a look at development cases, development plans that have been approved. Luckily, most of them have been built out and have already built any kind of commitments. I think the one that is left is, I think another person had a question about. So if it's, Scott, do you want to take this as far as like what we would do if our zoning change went through before that development plan was built?
Yeah, so every property owner has a right to get approval to build under whatever their zoning is right now. So if something is approved before this zoning takes place, is in place, then that plan could be vested they stay active for 4 years. So it's possible that some property owners may decide they want to vest themselves under the current zoning. Some may want to wait till the future zoning. But in general, that's what happens. So once the zoning changes, then new development that's applied for has to meet the new zoning, but there is a significant level of grandfathering allowed under our rules and state law.
Let's see, another question I see here. How about the parcel next to Sheets at the corner of Hobson and Davis? Let me refresh my memory on where that is. I believe that's included. Let me get our map again. Oh, the big parcel. Yeah. That that's the one that has an existing development plan on it. That folks have been talking about as well. I think Scott, you provided an answer earlier about that parcel, or at least what kinds of conversations would need to happen about that development plan.
Yeah, it would override the commercial retail that is currently required by that.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. A question. How many people are attending the webinar? How many came to the in-person meeting? Good question. So we have 24 attendees right now in this virtual meeting. I think we had 29 register for, so most people came. Great. And then at the in-person meeting a couple weeks ago, we had a little over 30 folks showed up um, to our meeting.
See, there's a question, would they be allowed to go ahead as planned on the parcel? And particularly the Davis Park mixed use parcel that we were just talking about, then yes, they could go ahead today. They've already got approval, zoning approval. Um, so not entirely sure what their intention is, but they could go ahead today.
Folks can still add questions or raise your hand. I'm still looking for that land use analysis I did. It's so silly because you think your stuff is well organized until somebody asks you a question and you have to find it. Oh, I see that comment, Robert. Thanks for that input there. It's an important consideration. We're planning to, because that's a key consideration to share with City Council. Make sure they have that. Um, and one option, like we talked about, is City Council could ask us to remove certain areas or add certain areas to the case area. And if that happens, we will do our best to make sure everybody knows those changes, because that would be a big change to the proposal. Oh, thanks, Mimi. Yeah, there's other development plans that are in place, have, except for the one we were just talking about, have been built out. So it wouldn't it would just open up a potential under new rules for the compact suburban design district. Sorry, it's muted. Um, the question is, can you share the slides? Yes, I will share the slides. I will send them by email and also post them on our web page. Yes, and I can, so yeah, the one with the place type map, I can definitely do that. Well, yeah, you'll have it all, and we can, you should be able to zoom into that map, and if not, I can send a bigger version of the map if you need it. So thanks. The question is, do you require adequate green space? Good question. Let me bring up the requirements. Let's see. So on our webpage, towards the bottom, we have a thing here about public spaces and environment. So public spaces are required for developments of at least 50,000 square feet on 2 acres or more. And for those developments that require public spaces, there's a minimum of 5% of the development site area. So it's a calculation, 5% of that site area that's being proposed has to be public space. There's also some interesting things in the code that says that some stormwater and green roof features can qualify for a percentage of that public space. So hopefully that answers your question. And if you certainly feel like, and 5% is hard to visualize, but if you feel like that's not adequate and have suggestions, we certainly hear that. I'm going to go to this question and then pop back to the chat. So what are the tie-ins with RTP HUD being developed in Davis and 54? Yeah, great question. So we have been in conversations with Research Triangle Foundation about their plans and their visioning, and have talked about how if RTPs, especially in that area, develops more densely and moves buildings closer to the seat and moves away from the suburban campus model, that it would provide a consistent transition along NC 54 to this area, which would have a similar pattern, hopefully, of walkable development. So when we talked, seems consistent. We both presented to the Joint City-County Planning Committee, which is made of county commissioners and city council, to talk about both initiatives. And so they're happening around the same time, and seem consistent and compatible with each other. Let me know if you have anything specific about that. Okay, other question, how this project affect your property values? Yeah, somebody else asked that question. We heard that question and concern earlier. So we don't, and property values, especially in the Davis Park area, that area is pretty already built out. I know there's that big section in question that has a development plan on it. So we don't anticipate much change in that western part right now. Certainly a lot of it's been built in the last 10 years, so not any redevelopment potential there. And plus a lot of those townhomes are smaller parcels, so it'd be very difficult for somebody to collect those and then change the development character in that area. Property value is something that's hard to to predict. Certainly, and it's kind of crazy in Durham right now for everybody as far as property values increasing all over the place. So best answer I got for that. Okay, this is another question. Okay, no problem. What's the main difference of purpose in the rezone here? Or are there multiple rezone proposals that I can catch? Yeah, great question. So the main purpose is to for our area to be rezoned to compact suburban design district, which is for a few reasons. One, it's consistent with our comprehensive plan that was adopted last October. We see that the community has said that they see this area as changing to be more walkable and dense urban environment with connections to transit, connections to RTP, and then of course, transit connections to the rest of Durham. So having land uses that are supportive of walking and biking and taking the bus is a best practice, and is widely supported in Durham by our elected officials. So that's kind of the main goal and the main hope there. Um, so yeah, just one rezoning proposal from us, from staff there. Additionally, I mentioned there's a few different plans in place for different transit projects or bike and ped projects that, um, if this area is rezoned to a zoning district that supports those projects, then that also helps those projects out as far as seeking funding, because it shows that the land uses are aligned with mass transit or with those public investments. I am reading this comment. Okay, yeah, so more concerned about that parcel changing if it changes. Yeah, I'm hearing, yeah, it's important that folks have um, predictability and know what is being built near them. So I can understand being concerned about any changes. So we will include that in our assessment and our conversations. Trying to understand. Okay, just to understand your comment, Mark. At least for the compact suburban design district, it's definitely not an intention to only um, encourage one use or one type of like monolithic development in an area, but to encourage a mix of uses. Um, Scott, you want to say something?
Yeah, Kayla, from what I've heard from the comments, it seemed like
Yeah,
there are quite a few comments about this, is that the current development plan for that site on Davis Drive um, requires ground floor retail and restaurant space.
I see.
And so if it were rezoned, it would be allowed, but would not be required. So yeah, that's something I don't remember hearing that at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, but certainly seems to be a theme tonight. So yeah, that's important feedback. Thanks for hearing that. Thanks
Yeah,
for
I
providing that.
definitely appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for the context. Okay. Do we know what is going to develop on Davis Hobson? Okay, this is more of the same question. Let's um let's dig up some more information and send that out after the meeting. What we can find as far as like what's approved and then what might be changing if that's in our zoning area. All right, then. Yeah, thanks, folks. Some folks are logging off. So before folks leave, just to reiterate, yes, I will. I will send a copy of the slides, and I'm going to have the recording posted on our webpage. It'll be a giant file, so it's better if it's linked to our webpage. But I'm gonna make sure folks get that, and I'll send an email probably next week because there's some information I want to dig up for you all. Thanks for coming. And Don, if
Yeah,
you're still on the call, sorry about that. I will email that to you.
thanks everyone for electing to spend a Tuesday night on Zoom with us. You probably had better options.
Yes, Christy, if you are registered, you registered with your email address, I will use that to contact you. If you have a different email address than you used to register, you can send me a chat privately. I think you can do that on Zoom. Um, but yes, I will use the data I have that you used to register. Okay, wonderful. Yes, Joel, definitely. You can email us and we can talk, certainly. And that goes for any folks too. If you'll have additional questions, I'll put my email address in the chat again, but you'll also hear from me, um, and we can clarify or answer any questions along the way. I'll go ahead and stop the recording to make sure that it uploads before I log off.